Hi everybody. Welcome to the stream. It's time for another day. We're gonna pick up right where we left off with the unit test we wrote yesterday failing on us. So, why is it failing on us? Well, we're having issues, it appears, with writing to our safe map. And essentially, if we lock it, we're not supposed to be able to write to it, right? So then the bracket operator is supposed to be a read instead of a write. So when it reports trying to get non-existent key, oh, this is blank. What is going on there? We gotta figure out why that's happening, right? So I assume it's because we don't set the current level, or something like that. So we might have to mess with that. So let's see. This is called, if we look at the stack trace here, we're going from Adventures in Listoria 4712. So let's go there. 4712. And so that's right here. This is during the setup level function. And so it says get map key name is blank. So that's interesting. I wonder why that's happening. Get map key name. How did we populate this? Get map key name returns from name. So we have to make sure that's populated if we fill in that. So if I go back to item tests, we obviously have to fill that in. Let's see here. I think the load level function should be responsible for that. So right here, I changed this a little bit, and what we did was, essentially, if we're in testing mode, there is a chance we create, like, artificial maps. So if we create an artificial map, then we don't want to necessarily generate it again using this syntax. So we actually check if map data contains said map, because when we're testing, we're not going to load all the maps. That's kind of a waste of time, waste of resources. Just makes the test longer for no reason. We don't have to load the whole game, right? So with that being said, we only add in artificial maps. And so checking if it doesn't exist means we will generate it then when we call initialize level, because that's the only way we would be able to generate it. Otherwise, we already have the map data. We shouldn't have to do this. So you can see here we have a map data at map.name equals map. So in either scenario, we should be modifying the map name. So this is all in common. So I would even go as far as to say this can go outside of this if statement, and both of those statements can be deleted like that. So let's go ahead and try running this test again, and we'll see if we can get further. Because it needed to look up the name in order to figure that data out. So we'll see what happens next. So just waiting for a recompile here. I hope everybody's doing well. Happy Friday. It's almost the weekend. Yay! We love the weekend. Okay. So this time we got an assert failed, which is good because our test actually finished. The assert says that we expected 3 and got an actual of 1 when it comes to stage loot has 3 items in it. So that's not quite what we were expecting. For this assert, we were expecting that inventory get stage loot returned 3. Oh, I see. It's just the number of unique items. So it would have returned 1 item in it, versus when we have a hub type test map, we expect it to have 0. So we just misunderstood what the actual correct value was supposed to be. Let's go ahead and run the test again. And hopefully this time, the test should still fail, but on that new assert we got, so then we can make the test pass. It's common in unit testing, if you can, to write the unit test before actually writing the fix for it. This ensures that you actually are testing the property correctly. Let's say you finished implementing something first, then you test it and you're like, oh, the test passes. So I have this test now. Well, did you try testing a failing case? This just does it kind of in reverse, right? So you write it first, make sure it fails, and then when you make the fix, it should pass, and then you know that change directly influenced the test directly. And then, afterwards, you can run another test through all the other tests to ensure you haven't caused other side effects. Now, we're getting an error, so that's interesting. We went from no error to error. Probably related to the map loading again, because now we're loading a non-existing map. Like, this map doesn't actually exist in the game. We're just artificially making it. So let's see what happens there. Let's go back to the debug log, and it says... accessing out of bounds list item 0 of inputs. This is in item add and remove effect stage loose test load level in game helper. Okay, also util data file.h. Okay, so let's see here, game helper.h line 94. So this is calling initialize level. So one of these keys does not exist then. In this case, it's trying to load it directly from the map file. So the map file doesn't exist, essentially is what it's saying. So if we ever load a level, we have to include a map file for it to actually load. I just wanted to artificially make a map that is not actually a map, for the sake of us making sure that this doesn't occur, right? It only occurs in boss and dungeon maps. So, I mean, I could still make a map myself, but maybe instead of calling load level, let's just... like, we don't even need setup level at this point. Or maybe we do, but we're just gonna call these two. We're not gonna load level... let's see. Load level with TMX. So yeah, we'll have load level with TMX, and then we'll just have load fake level or something. It says no references found. Load level with TMX. And then we have another one called like load fake level, I guess. It really is loading a level without a TMX file, but yeah, that's kind of what I want. And I think that would be good. Hello, I am the Briefcase. Welcome. Good to see you. So yeah, I think this would be appropriate. So in this case, we can load level with TMX because we know it actually has an associated map file with it, but this is a fake level. So I'm just making this up for the sake of testing, so we can call game load fake level here in order to satisfy that. And there are a few other places where we call this function, so I'm gonna have to fix that as well. Right here in monster tests, load level with TMX file. Again, for some reason, the renaming refactoring function was not recognizing it in Visual Studio, so we're doing it manually. That's fine. It's only a couple places. There are also some in player tests, so let me go there real quick. Player tests. And we'll fix those unit tests real quick that use that function. So there's one. So we just say load level with TMX. And then one more right here. I believe that should be everything. So let's go ahead and try to run this unit test again now. Oh, let me stop the other one. Go ahead and run it one more time. And then hopefully we get further, or what I really hope is that we just get to the other assert, and then that fails the test. That would be nice. But yeah, happy Friday. I'm excited for the weekend. We have a couple of dinner plans and such. Even tonight. That's why I'm all dressed up. Let's see. We still have an error. It's still trying to get a non-existent key. And this is in setup level for 4711. Let's take a look. So that's under here where we're expecting it looks like a map key name, but it doesn't exist. Let me see. Because setup level, oh, if we don't initialize level, this never gets called. So can we assume that we always need to provide a map and that we can like put that in as a requirement for game? I would say so. So let's just throw that in, right? If we don't initialize, we know for sure we need to initialize it here. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna say map key name for map data for the game map data structure is going to have that map key name. It's inaccessible from this object though, so we'll have to fix that. But I think that's fair to say that we should do this here in the case of it not loading manually. Because we're not calling initialize level, we don't have to, there's no reason to. So, alright, let's see here. So we want to make game helper game. Let me see, so it'll be in namespace game. And then I think the class is just called game helper. I could be wrong. Oh, it's not even a class, it's just a namespace. That might be a problem, actually. I don't think you can friend class a namespace. That doesn't quite work, right? So would that mean these are considered, So that means that since it's in the global namespace, we have to friend, we have to, like, friend the function. I think I've seen this. Excuse me. I think I've seen this before, but I've never actually had to use it, or I never realized what it was for. So I'm going to guess that this is actually what we need to do. Something like this, or I just remember there being something we had to do kind of like this. Because I know you can friend functions somehow. Declaration is okay. So maybe this actually works. I was always wondering how this would work. And maybe this is why this exists. I could be wrong though. And then game needs to be defined, must be a class or namespace name. So I guess if it isn't defined already, we can define it ourselves. We're like forward declaring the namespace or something, maybe? That's just my guess. And then hopefully that's enough. But I guess we would have to define this too, right? So it would be like, okay, once again, we do like a declaration of that function inside here. And then it would know that exists, right? Kind of like when we forward declared these classes to say they exist somewhere, but we don't actually have them here. Maybe that's enough to get the compiler to be happy. I'm gonna try building now because it looks fine. So I've always wondered why we would friend a function. But I think this is actually the correct use case for it. If it isn't tied to a class, then we could friend it that way. We might be able to friend like a function, like a static function in a class too. I think that would be the same kind of use case. Let's go ahead and give this a shot. It's kind of weird. I've never actually done this before. I just know the syntax existed, and I always wondered why this existed. So, who knows? Maybe this actually does what we need it to, and we'll be happy. That's rather fascinating, though. It will require a recompile due to adding that friend class. And this being inside... Is this TMX parser? Oh, it is. Yeah, that's a big recompile. A lot of things use it, so it's expected. Map is everywhere. This time I prepared. I actually grabbed some stuff, like a snack and a drink. So during compile time, I'm not sitting here idle. I can actually have a drink or something and actually do something while waiting. So that's fun. Should be done shortly here, hopefully. So it built, which I'm happy about. So I guess that's the use case for like a friend function. I've never had to do that before. That's kind of cool. When you only want a specific function to access your stuff. But it has to be like static or global. I don't think you can make like local member functions do that. At least I don't think I've made it work. I think I've tried and I've ran into an issue. Okay, so here we go. assert failed. Stage loot has 0 items in it. Expected 0, actuals 1. So our test is now properly checking for what the expected behavior is. If we are in a non-dungeon or boss map, we should expect this to actually not add an item in it, but it currently does, which is the case we were trying to isolate and fix. It is a global function. It just exists inside of a namespace, but it's not in a class. So it's just in the global namespace, or it's a global just under a namespace, kind of like standard. So yeah, it's a global function essentially, with just an extra name tied to it. Okay, so now we get to do the implementation to make this unit test actually work. So let's go back to, in this case, we can actually go straight to add item. And what we want is when we call add item and we insert into stage inventory category, we only want to do this function if our current map type is a dungeon or a boss. Because if it's not, we don't have to worry about this. So we're just gonna add an if statement right here that says if game get current map dot get type is not equal to map type, we have boss and dungeon. So if it's not equal to boss and it's not equal to dungeon, then we're not going to do anything here and we're just going to return, because we shouldn't be adding items like that. So with this modification, if we now go back to our unit test and run it again, we should expect that it will now pass because we have modified it to only add to dungeon and boss type maps. Yeah, namespace. For sure. Okay, so let's see that in action. And now, oop, test still failed. Stage loot still has 1 item in it. Did we clear the stage loot though? Okay, so maybe we didn't clear the stage loot, right? Well, if we load the fake level, there should be 0 items in it. But let's add another assert to make sure after we load another level, we actually have 0 items in it again, because we would not be resetting it, which means this test would be invalid regardless, right? So let's run this test now, because it's failing anyways, so I don't feel like modifying the test case would hurt. Because if it asserts here, then that means us calling load level does not actually clear items, which might be a problem. We're making the assumption that when we call load level, we're actually resetting the state of everything, so we might have missed something that resets the state of stage loot if that assert gets hit. Okay, so on line 120, the assert has failed. So I was right. It looks like when we call load level, at least with the load level we have here, we don't actually reset the structures. So why is that? I think in our normal game loop, when we call like load level or whatever, it probably does that itself. So we have like reset all data, which includes reset level states. Let me take a look. Does this reset everything? So we're particularly looking for inventory related stuff. So we can see here, like, there is so much resetting going on. Reset loadout items used. I'm not really seeing anything about... But yes, it looks like we have no reset going on with the stage list, this inventory. Which, I guess is a problem. We do need to fix that. I don't know where this happens, though. I guess we have to figure that part out. So let's see. When we call add item and we add to that like stage inventory category, what structure are we modifying? We are modifying, let's see. We're modifying the sorted inventory. So we're looking for something that will either reset this or change it. So let's look for that. And presumably it would be under inventory. So maybe we should back up here and see what else we call other than reset level states. Because maybe we'll find something down below. Monster spawn data setup. I feel like this would have been the place where it would have happened. Like somewhere in here. Reset all data. So, yeah. Reset level states. Zoneless resets. Button in-game controls resets. Loading screen reset. I don't know if that does anything interesting. But let's take a look. Oh, it just resets the loading screen. Of course. Just makes it so it's prepared with like 0 progress. You gotta add phases and all that good stuff. Okay. So when does this get cleared is my next question. Let's look for all references to sorted inventory and see if we can figure that out. Otherwise, we might have to go into like a debug state and actually explore a little bit. But let's try this. So let's find all references to sorted inventory. And we're looking for anything that might reset. We're looking for like a clear or something. There's one. This is an item.cpp under initialize items. Now my question is, when we go back to like the main menu or something, after we've cleared a stage and we start another stage and beat it, we don't see the list of previous sorted items. So this either this gets called somewhere or clear gets called specifically somewhere else. Or maybe it gets called under remove item. So that's interesting. While sorted inventory size is greater than 0. Okay, this looks like some kind of remove thing. Ah, inventory clear. So where does this get called? So inventory clear gets called under Adventures in Story CVP, under reset game. I mean, that makes sense, but that's not quite the scenario we're looking for. We have inventory clear, that's the declaration. Okay, inventory clear stage loop. This looks exactly like we want, and it's under state overworld map. Ah, so it's on a state change. We clear these. So I could argue that every time we are resetting a level, we want to do this, right? No matter what. Not necessarily when we go to the overworld map, because that doesn't really make sense, right? This more likely triggers whenever we change levels. So let's move it to initialize or reset. Is it reset level states, I think? Yeah, reset level states. I think this is a fair place to put it. So I'm just going to drop those two in here. We're going to call inventory clear monster loot and inventory clear stage loot whenever we call reset level states. And that's every single time we call initialize a level, which makes sense. That's effectively what we want. Well, actually, that's not true. We don't call reset level states when we initialize a level. We call it when we load the level. So let's go back again to game helper. We do setup level. So setup level is supposed to, like, I guess, load the level. So this would be a good time to call reset level states, maybe. It's like, okay, well, we have setup level, which is called later than here. Like, setup level is done... it should be done before loading a level, I think. Let's take a look at our use case in a normal gameplay loop. Setup level in the current document. So it's called here under initialize levels. Okay, so this is still like initializing, which makes sense. It's why we don't do it here. So set current level should be doing that. And if we set the current level, it's like we're changing the level, right? So changing a level should do that on top of... Okay, so I guess what we could do is we can say reset level states here, right? If we're force setting the current level, which this function only gets used for like testing purposes, it's not really a function we're supposed to use. So it's understood to be that way. That's why it has an underscore in front of it. It's got a weird, unique use case. So if we look here, we really only see it in those places. I guess I should switch to solution. There we go. So we do underscore set current level and anything test related, but not necessarily in our actual project. So that kind of proves that this is only used for testing purposes. So I would even argue, should we just move this over to like the game utility? If it's not even used, like, think about it. This isn't used for the actual game. What if I find it one day, I'm like, oh, here's a set current level function. It literally doesn't do what I need it to do. So that's not how we would change level in a normal game loop. So I would even argue that this is kind of bad, like risky design. If I look at it and I'm like, oh, I could use this to change the level. That's not actually the case. So let's go ahead and remove it. Yeah, I do put a notice here. This will modify the current level variable without triggering anything else in game. This will normally mess up the state in the game. Ideally, this is only used when initializing a test level. So I even include that note there, and maybe I'll bring it over when I modify game helper, because I want to just bring it in here as an inline void function that we can just call casually inside our test suite. So obviously this is going to need to access the game's internal like variables. So it too will need to be a friend function like we did before. And now that we know how to do that, I actually want to utilize that system again for class AIL. So I'm gonna go ahead and go for that because I like that system. So right here, if we theoretically add in that we just mentioned this function exists, we're essentially forward declaring it. So we have namespace game, and we say, because I inlined it, and since I inlined it, I can't really provide a header with the declaration. And I don't really want to. I'm going to keep it inlined. So I'm just saying this exists somewhere. Compiler will link it later. Then we can just say friend of void and provide this function. We're saying, okay, this function has access to AIL. And because it does, it should also be able to modify current level after that. And then I think we should be good. I prefer that. And then I'll just get rid of underscore set current level from inside of AIL. And I'll bring along this comment as well. I do think that's important. It's good to understand that a function isn't quite doing what we expect. And now I'm going to go back to our item tests one more time. And yeah, if we call these two now, set current level will actually call reset level state, so we have a clean slate. Now, will this mess up other tests because we made assumptions that load level did other things? Maybe, but at the same time, I don't expect it to. So let's give it a try. There are only a couple places where we load custom levels to test in, so if anything, we might just have to fix those. But let's start off by testing this part of the test suite first, and go from there. So, oh, also we have to change these declarations now. This function is in the same namespace, so we should be calling a local function like that. And that should be okay. So hopefully when it gets down to compiling that, it'll be happy with that. Otherwise I have to run it one more time. But yeah. And then hopefully with this unit test actually working, we'll be able to go from there. So I'm glad we actually tested that, because it was... I didn't really think about it. I'm like, oh, does loading another level even reset the stage loot, right? Like, it's something I didn't realize would even happen. And so, yeah, it's good that we actually checked for that and asserted that, because now this will actually work. So maybe I could argue that we should try removing that line I just added and making sure this test case fails once again once we get to this line, not because of loading a level, but because of adding another item. Because if we add the same item, we're going to end up with a stage loot that has 1. So either way, this would have resulted in 1 item being inside of stage loot. So it actually didn't prove that the test worked for that. So we do have some errors. AIL current level cannot access private member declared in class AIL, even though we friended it. Okay, let's see here. Would I have had to do something special to make sure that would work? Because I did friend it, but maybe we didn't do it right, or maybe that's not how it works, and I thought it works that way. So it says this doesn't exist. Did I mess up? Oh, I have to friend the function inside of game, not the local function called setCurrentLevel. There we go. So that's why it didn't work. Now let's try again. Again, brand new syntax. Well, it's not a brand new concept. I knew this exists. I just didn't realize this is actually the use case. So that's fascinating that the use case finally came up today, because I've seen this in the past, and I'm like, what is the point? When would you actually use this? And when practical applications for using stuff you've never used before pop up, that's when you get the aha moment. Then you can link, okay, the next time I need to get private access to members in another class, and I don't want to expose the whole class, just a specific function needs it, I can do it this way. And I would even argue maybe that's good practice. You see how I have all these friend classes for various things to say, hey, you guys are clear to use, to modify any of the state of AIL? Well, what if we only had one or two functions from these classes that needed to be modified, right? Technically, if I do the same thing I did up here and just forward declared what they looked like, then I could do that. Now, I guess there is a couple of things I have to be careful of. Like, for example, if we have to include the header file in here, then I guess I don't have to do this. I don't have to forward declare it. But if I ever change the prototype of this, I'm going to have to change the prototype in a bunch of places. A find and replace might be able to get it, but I have a feeling like refactoring it across multiple solution or projects might be a bit more difficult, because my unit testing is actually in a separate project from my main game, because what we do is we generate a DLL of my actual game project, and that's what gets loaded into the unit testing suite to run games. So setCurrentLevel is not a member of AIL. I thought I fixed this, but like I said, I might have to... Oh, interesting. So I do use that here. Okay, so we're fixing that by saying game setCurrentLevel, like so. And there was one more inside of, I think, monster tests that also did the same thing. So we might have to do that too. Yeah, right here. Same problem. I don't know if that applies to player tests. Let's take a look. I never can find player tests either. There it is. It's just missing in that sea of tabs, which we should close, by the way. We're building up, so we might close those tabs at some point. And this one doesn't do that, which is interesting. We might actually call setLevelState ourselves, but that's fine. All right. So let's recompile again. It didn't even compile yet, and we'll see. If the test passes, I need to go back and remove what I added to make sure it fails and we're testing the right thing. And it wasn't just a side effect of us loading a different level and it not resetting, right? So this is good that we're testing this. And then of course we made some fundamental changes. There's one in buff test too? Okay, fine. We'll get that one too. Fair. But yeah, we've made some fundamental changes to some core systems of our game. Luckily, we've written a bunch of unit tests to help make sure those are still functioning right. So we'll run the whole unit test suite after this one works to make sure that we haven't messed with anything else. So let's take a look. So the test is now passing, which means my hunch that we're going to have to remove it again to make it fail was correct. So let's go back into item.cpp now, and let's actually remove the line we added to insert into sorted inventory, or into stage inventory category. I'm going to remove this line now, and we're going to make sure the test actually still fails when we didn't have that, because it needs to fail on that last line, that last assert. And in fact, I want to be more explicit with these asserts because I literally just copy pasted it, right? So stage loot has 0 items in it after loading a new stage. And I would even go as far as to say at the very beginning, let's make sure there was nothing in it in the first place, right? So we can go as far as doing these tests in a couple more places, making sure we're extra careful that nothing is breaking here. Has 0 items when the game starts. Has 0 items in it when the game starts. In it after loading a new stage. Has 1 item in it. Has 0 items in it after loading a new stage. And then has 0 items in it due to not being a dungeon or boss stage. And at this point, I actually want to add in a boss stage type because we only tested a normal stage, but we haven't tested a boss stage. So let's actually request the boss stage as well. I'm just going to do boss 1, I think it's called boss underscore 1. But let's do that stage request as well, because that stage is a boss stage. So it'd be nice to get another, like, test data point to make sure boss stages are also considered. And then maybe making that fail to make sure we're testing for the right thing. So after loading a new stage, stage has 1 item in it. After collecting an item in a dungeon stage, and then we'll go ahead and do a reset. And this time we'll reset into the boss 1 stage, because that's what we're going to be looking at. I don't think I have to do this, though. I'm not 100% sure. Because I think what happens is initialize level does it for us if it doesn't exist already. So if I don't include it now, I think in theory it will load it for me, because boss 1 is a real stage. So it should actually do that for us. So stage loot has 1 item in it after collecting an item in a boss stage. So making these asserts more descriptive, that way we know when it fails. So we need to test this in a couple more ways, right? Let's go ahead and run this again. And we should expect it to fail on the very last assert for now. But I also need to make it try fail on a boss assert, as in we already knew that normal stages and boss stages it was working in. So I think that's actually okay. Maybe we should go ahead and test the other stage types to make sure those don't get leaked, right? So we can make a test map that is of a different type. We have hub and we only have hub, right? That's the only other stage type, I think. So yeah, it says stage that has 0 items in it due to not being a dungeon or boss stage. So that is the last assert. So we know that actually is the thing that we're triggering. So now I'm going to undo, which puts that back. And now the test should pass once again. And then I'm pretty happy with this unit test. We've pretty much covered our bases so that if anything breaks, it will fail. So I'm now going to run the entire test suite. And we're going to make sure that we haven't broken anything else. And while this is running, we can construct our commit. This is under inventory optimization. So did we actually optimize the inventory yet? We still got ways to go with that, but this is like the first steps, right? So let's take the time to write out our git changes so far, our git commit. So the changes so far have been, while the tests are running, let's see. So far we've modified it so the stage loot inventory, stage loot, and monster loot. Oh, so we have to test monster loot as well. So we can do those asserts like simultaneously, right? In fact, we could even combine them, although we should run them as separate asserts. Okay, so let's actually do that now before we get too far in our tests. I expect it to pass, like the logic should be exactly the same since they're both handled in the same function, theoretically. But let's actually write out the test that would do that, right? So let's go back in item tests real quick. And let's go ahead and also poke at the monster loot while we're at it. So I'm just going to copy all these statements. And then we're going to... Ooh, I messed up. Yeah, but we're going to copy all of these statements. And what I would like to do is modify them to mention monster loot instead. So right here, all we have to do is change this to monster loot, and then change the description to match. As this should also not be populating unless that's the case. And also, we would have to make them boss drops. So actually, when we're testing here for number of items, this should actually still be 0 items after collecting a non-monster drop item in a dungeon stage. And then let's give the player a monster drop. So let's add 3 more health potions, but we're going to set the monster drop flag to true. This would be the equivalent of you picking up an item that is dropped by a monster in the game. So that's the flag you set when you're setting up the item drop. So now Monster Loop should have 1 item in it after collecting a monster drop item in a dungeon stage, and Stage Loop should still only have 1. It should not increment, so we can make sure that behavior is still working correct. And then we have to reset it and do it again for a boss stage. So you can see here, I actually didn't change these two to say boss. So I'm going to update that description. And then right below that, we're going to again add a health potion as a monster drop. And we should expect that it works the same way. And then in any other stage, no matter if we pick up a regular drop or a monster drop, well, regular drop is not a thing, but stage loot would be like, you complete a stage, here are the items, and that's what triggers the stage loot to populate. But yeah, items in it when picking up monster drops due to not being a dungeon or boss stage. So lots of asserts, but they're important. They make sure all the systems are behaving the way we would expect. So I like this test a lot better. It's a lot more comprehensive. Gives us a lot more details. Let's go ahead and rerun it now. And this should already be applied. Like, we shouldn't have to modify any code to make sure all these tests work. We already know the behavior of them is satisfied due to stage loot and monster loot. And I say should, right? Maybe the test actually detects something wrong, so who knows? But what we did was we made a stage and monster loot tables only populate in dungeon and boss map types. Also, let me make sure we don't have any extra map types we're not testing for as like additional edge cases, right? So if we go back to map type, oh, we do have world map. So let's also test the world map state. I think that would be another one to make sure of, right? So we have a hub type test map. Let's add a world map type test map. So we're gonna go ahead and do essentially the same thing. Generate a new map called world type, a new fake map. It doesn't actually exist in our game. And then right here, world type test map, and this will be a world type now. Just to make sure nothing weird happens just because we're on the world map, right? So these are the 2 states. Let's go back to our test case. And in our test case, we're going to add in one more. We're going to load in a world type test map and do all the same checks. We should expect the same type of behavior. So we got world type test map. Okay. So now let's go ahead and run every test. I'm actually satisfied. Okay. So go back here and let's go ahead and continue our commit message. So stage and monster loot tables only populate in dungeon and boss map types. And then we also moved the, what was it called? The inventory generator code, UI updating code for loading and saving the game to the very end of the load/save process, reducing the number of calls dramatically. for loading times. For loading speeds. For improved loading speeds. Alright, let me think what else we would have done so far. We still haven't done it for Emscripten, so maybe I should make a note for that. Not done for Emscripten. So maybe we should look at that real quick. Either we can implement it quickly for Emscripten, or we're going to have to go back and do something special for it later. Because it's important that Emscripten also gets this change. Actually, I would argue it's even more important that the web build gets it, because the web build is a little slower due to it running in JavaScript. Or I wouldn't say running in JavaScript, but due to it running in the browser. Naturally, it's just gonna be a little slower. So let's go to save file. Like, the whole point of WebAssembly is to have something faster to access than just a higher level JavaScript. But it's still running in a browser, which takes up some overhead. Not as much overhead, but still some. So, again, in load file, or no, excuse me, it's load game. So we have two functions, right? We have save game and we have save file. We have load game and load file. The whole point is that in load game, it's like a wrapper to say, okay, if we're in Emscripten, before we called load file, we have to first retrieve a file. In this case, I called it server get file. Otherwise, we just call load file, because we're going to be doing that anyways. So we just added like an online file retrieve wrapper around it, and it's threaded, so when it's done, it will then call load file after it's obtained a local file from the server. So it's really just a wrapper, but load file gets called in the end. So me saying it doesn't actually work for Emscripten is incorrect, because it looks like save game and load game are literally just wrappers, or save file, excuse me. So let's go back and look again. I don't see a save file. I see a save game. Oh, okay, here's the Emscripten stuff, but it's like, okay, it's the same idea, right? We write it all to a file, doing all this stuff, and then we do this. So it's like, okay, it's the same thing. Everything gets set. I guess the only issue, and this is what I saw, right, was game set quit allowed doesn't get reset. So if it's reset, we have to do this call after the reset. If we do it before, and essentially what's saying is that we're still in the middle of save filing, so it won't update this at this moment. Then we would have a bug in the Emscripten build where we go look at our inventory and it won't be updated because this got called too early, and it's supposed to ignore updating it during a loading time. So essentially what we have to do is put this actually in here and put all these in here. But you can see I'm going to be copy pasting this in what looks to be 3 places. So I would argue, because this is the retry if it fails, so I'm going to actually change this a little bit, since we're just copy pasting this everywhere, to actually be a little lambda that we can call. Because I don't like this idea of, what if I change how this actually works later on, right? I don't want to have to modify in 4 places, so let's just make a little lambda that will call these for us. So this is going to be const auto finish, or we're going to call this loading finished on load finish. Maybe? I guess we should just describe what it does, right? Set saving state, or remove, cancel saving state, and reset or update item category, item inventories, item inventory GUIs. I'm just gonna say UIs instead of GUIs. Cancel saving state and update item inventory UIs. I like that function name. I think it's a very fair name to use. And in here, let's just provide, because we're going to call a static function here, and game is a global pointer, so we won't need to include any captures. We're just calling this followed by this. And again, these are all static functions or globals, so they won't need to actually capture anything, which is great. And then we remove this. Oh, I'm seeing some failed tests. Specifically, item tests are failing. So that's interesting. I wonder what happened there. So all these places where it said game set quit allowed, we call cancel saving state and update inventory UIs. Now this is saving, so hold on. Do we update items during saving? No, right? We only update items during loading. So we don't really need to do all that, do we? Yeah. Why are we doing that in saving the game? I guess originally I said it would be for saving and loading, but that doesn't really make sense, right? We only have to update the UI when we load the game because that's when our inventory is changing. Our inventory doesn't change because we hit save game. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we don't have to do any of this. So I deleted that. That's fine. We don't have to call that function at all. We're just wasting time. Okay. Well, that fixes that, I guess. That solves that. So now, let's take a look at those failed tests, shall we? We just have unhandled exceptions, so we must have messed up somewhere in terms of, it looks like initialized monster data. Maybe it's going to complain about how we don't have that King Slime initialized. That might be a thing, right? Because we're loading an actual stage. So unlike Campaign 1.1, where we kind of made like a fake stage, but we loaded the TMX file with the data, I guess we're doing the same thing here. We're like trying to load the boss and maybe it's not working. So let's see. What is the error this time? Let's search for error, because this is just an accumulation log of every single test. So here the error was trying to get non-existent key, skeleton fire mage idle. Skeleton fire mage. That's interesting. I'm not sure why we're trying to get skeleton fire mage. Oh, you know what? I think I know why. I think we use it for a particular test. This just didn't finish writing. It just says trying T. And that's it. Trying to get non-existent key, skeleton fire mage idle. Okay, so it's for all of these. So skeleton fire mage idle was recently added. So maybe it just failed to update the asset. And maybe that's the problem. Because I'm pretty sure it actually exists. So monsters, commercial assets, skeleton fire mage. And so it says trying to get non-existent key. Okay, so we don't have animations loaded. Let's take a look at that then. And this was for any item test. So we probably don't load animations, which made sense. It had nothing to do with them before. But for loading a stage, we're going to need the animations. So we're going to need that line as well. So let's go ahead and bring that in. Again, every time we add more to the loading pipeline, it does increase the amount of time our tests take, but you can see every other test pass. So we just have to rerun the item test suite and make sure those now pass. Because it was just an error in terms of it didn't have the right stuff loaded. So the state of the game was in an unusable state, essentially. Alright, so let's see what happens now. It looks like they're finally passing. Good. So let's just make sure all these tests pass. And if every test in here passes, then I have pretty good confidence that everything we've implemented so far has not dramatically hurt the game. So then after this, our whole point of doing all this was to optimize the loading a bit, right? So let's see where we're at in terms of loading times. Even if I run it in debug, I expect at least a little bit of speed improvements. Ooh, so we still have an assert failed. That's interesting. Why? Monster Loot has 0 items in it after collecting a non-monster drop in a dungeon stage. Okay, interesting. So the assert failed right here. Monster Loot has 0 items in it after collecting a non-monster drop. So we had the flag set to false, but it still added it to Monster Loot, apparently. That's interesting. Oh, the test is wrong. The test is looking for 1, but obviously the intent was to test for 0 items in it. So let's fix that. We have to fix that in the other place we did this too. So in here, or not in here, where is it? It's right when we add this. So we go here. Yeah, same problem. There should be 0 items in monster loot when we collect after collecting a non-monster drop. So yes, that would be right here after collecting, or no, excuse me, wrong one. Right here after collecting a non-monster item in a boss stage. We're testing for 0. So I just wrote the wrong test assert there. So that's the only test we have to fix, and hopefully that actually gets all the way through now. And then that'll mean every test is now passing successfully. So that's great. Then we'll take a look at our load times. And indeed, this test now passes, so we have a fully 100% tested suite. And so our functions are good. So let's go ahead and actually run the game now. So that was a good example showing off, like, okay, I have something that's pretty critical to the game, and so I'm gonna write a test and actually make sure that the game understands that this is an important critical thing. We want to make sure it still works in the future, right? This is the defined behavior. I think this was a very good example to actually create a unit test for. You can see it was pretty involved. It helped us test a lot of different behaviors, and it gives me confidence that we have done what we should have without actually trying it in game, right? I don't have to go in game and go to a dungeon level, then look at, then complete it, look at the stage loot, see if it's actually there. Same with monster loot, right? I can test each one of these individually. I can test for bosses. I can test the non-stage ones. So I can make sure this is completely fixed and working correctly. Which is great. That's exactly what we want to test. So yeah. And the whole point of this was when we tried to load a game, we're adding items to our inventory, right? So what we noticed was that the stage loot was getting populated with every item we added from our inventory, which is why it was taking a long time, because every time we updated the stage loot, we would also request that item to be added to the stage loot inventory display. And then, of course, adding all those items also caused our inventory list to be completely wiped out and re-updated. We found out that was really slow, a really slow feature, so we're like, oh, we're not like batching this. We're not waiting till everything's done. So now we wait until the game has completely loaded before it adds or updates the inventory. And then finally, we have, we found out that when we're done with the game, all those like 700 something items we added to stage loot then have to get removed from the inventory when you reset the game. So that's why when we saved a game and left to the main menu, it also was slow. So there was a lot of little issues that I guess I just didn't realize at the time due to the system. So now that we've kind of tracked that down, we're going to see here, if I load this game, it basically loads instantly again, which is great. That is much better than before, where we were sitting here for a good 45 seconds, which is absolutely insane, right? And if we look, oh, we have no items. Why is that? We have no items. Hold on. Well, that's not good, is it? Or maybe, let me think about this. Do we not have items, or are they just not updated in the UI? Alright, let's look at the save file first, make sure the items still exist. The file's really big, so that's promising. So we can see the items still exist. So I'm actually going to copy this to my clipboard in case I lose this file. I'm going to go ahead and save. And we can see the saving process does take a while. So we're gonna have to look at that next time, right? Or not next time, but next. We still have time today to work on our code, so we're gonna keep going. But you can see the save process takes a while, for whatever reason, right? Probably for similar ideas. I think it's because we're removing items, so it's not necessarily the saving that's the slow part, it's the resetting that's the slow part. So we're gonna have to address that next. But anyways, once this is done, this is a good sign that all the items got added to our inventory. It's just the UI didn't update. So that means that load game did not call that function at the very end, or that function just didn't do what it was supposed to. So let's look at load game again and see what we did. So we set quit allowed to false. So when we do that, saving file becomes equal to true, because it's going to be the reverse of this. So we're saving the file now. That state is the same. Then we call load file. So we call load file. We do a bunch of things. So saving file is still true. Saving file is still true. We get all the way to the bottom here. Then we call this. We expected that this is going to be the thing that makes the UI updated. Apparently it doesn't. So we're back on the title screen. Let me look at the save file one more time. So it's the same. It hasn't changed, other than probably the gameplay time, which presumably has gone up, right? So let's go ahead and jump back in one more time. I assume that loading any save file now does not make the inventory screen update with items, so we're gonna have to fix that now. And I assume maybe these are... No, these are fine. These get populated. So we're missing a couple of interfaces now. So that's our next step. Let's try to figure out why, because these technically should have done that. It should have gone through every category, called this callback function, which then goes through and updates anything that is listening for these particular categories. And then it should have called their respective on inventory slots update functions as well. So the reason, I guess the question is, why didn't it work, right? That would be the next question. Because for an inventory scrollable window component and all the components within, it should have worked. For all intents and purposes, that should have worked. So we gotta figure out why that didn't work. Because we get, I think it gets to down here. We call on inventory slots update, whatever that function is, we call that with whatever needs to be updated, and it does that. And I think what all this culminates to, if we go back to item.cpp, we're looking in insert into sorted inventory, which then you can see calls menu inventory slots updated for that. Sorted inventory.at.pushback. That should have still been called. So is this like not being called or something? Well, clearly we have the items. Like we saw that when we were saving, these items still existed. So it can't be that. I wonder what actually happened. That's interesting. And it's confusing why it didn't work. But let's try to follow this, right? So we're gonna go to save file, and let's say, let's first start here. Let's just actually run these and see what it tries to do. I guess that's a good starting point. And then if we find out we're not calling any like add items because we're like skipping over them or something, that's when we're gonna have to investigate. So hopefully this ends up making sense. So my unit tests don't actually test if the GUI has items in it after adding items. Could we argue that testing the GUI for that is important? As the GUI is like the main interface the player deals with, right? So if the items don't get added to the GUI, something is wrong. I'm trying to think if we have an easy way to see that. We could just check the number of components in there. That's not too costly. That might be what we do. But yeah, let's go ahead and load up this file again, and we should hit that breakpoint, because that's when saving completes. So now, let's go in... Oh, you know what? Do we set saving file to false? I don't think we do. I think I completely forgot about that. Look, we're here. Where's the reset for saving file, right? I want to argue that doesn't happen here. Does it happen load game? Load game. Okay, yes it does. So that's actually our issue. We did it in here instead of out there. But if we do it out here, we have that same problem with that we had when we were looking at save game, is that we have to make something to trigger these when we call load file, right? So I see now. That's why it wasn't working. So simple fix. But now that we've encountered this, I kind of worry in the future. So, because this is another potential thing that could break, what if we come down here, let's say six months later, right? Let's come down here, we're like, oh, that's weird. What is this doing? It's just updating the inventory slots. I don't need that. Everything starts breaking, right? Well, let me go back on that and say the loading files and all that will now take a long time again. So this is intentional. So we have to make sure this is accounted for. I'm just trying to think, okay, what would be a good way to test for that? Well, let's say, we could save like a fake test file. That shouldn't be that hard. We just call save game. It will save it for us. I guess the save file path will be the same. Actually, what would be the save file path? Let's think about that. Because when we're running the test suite, we're actually in a different directory. I think we're running it from in here, if I'm not mistaken. We are. So we're expecting all the files to be in here now. So we could technically write a new save file that's just a fake test file. And it won't affect our real data. Like, every time we do a unit test, by the way, like we run the unit testing suite, it copies all the resources it needs into a unit testing directory. That way, if there's anything specific we need to do for unit testing resource-wise, we just add those in. And we have a specific script that does that for us. So if we're looking at, let me see if I can find it real quick. Unit testing pre-build. So this was made to address the fact that, let me see, has unsaved changes. There are also changes. If you reopen the file, unsaved changes will be discarded. Let's reopen the file. That's fine. So you can see here, we're literally just copying all of assets to unit testing. So that's the pre-build. And then I think there's one more when it's actually like starting to run that generates more stuff. I'm not sure where it is, but I know it exists somewhere. Anyway, that's the concept though, is that we can add or customize what actually happens during unit testing from within there. I think we moved a lot of it to like config files too. We're like, okay, only do this for unit testing, but don't do this normally. A lot of little like exceptions here or there for that. But technically, I should be able to do a save file or a load file and then say, okay, has the number of item slots increased? But then we need a control case, right? We need to have a file that has items at all times. So we would have to make one. So maybe let's just make one real quick for testing purposes. Let's see here. Saves. This doesn't get transferred to the final build, so I think this is okay to do if we just do it ourselves here. So I'm going to call this like test save. But how are we going to detect that that's the test save file? I guess we won't know unless we specify, oh, that's a folder. The idea is there, but I think we need to make a custom save file ID. So a save file ID that will never actually exist is save -1. So if we do save.-0001, I think that would work. I'm pretty sure the zeros get prepended right here still, so it would look like this, save.-0001, and I'm going to make my current Ranger save file the base test case for our unit testing. And then we're going to basically force the I'm just having some fun renaming files everywhere. And then we're just going to make the base or the save file ID when running unit testing to be this one. Should be pretty easy. And then we call load file, and then we test the GUI elements to see how many there are. So in this case, if we write it right now, it should fail. So I'm going to go back into item tests. I feel like it falls under item tests. It's item related, even though we're loading a game. So we've never loaded a game via the test suite before, so we're going to find out how that works. Because calling load game, I don't think it does other stuff. It doesn't have, like, other calls after it. Oh, it does change the state, though. Does it? Let me see. Load game calls load file. I think that's it. It doesn't... Yeah, it doesn't change the state or anything. But maybe in here it changes state. Let's see. It does change state to overworld map. So let me think. Is that going to do anything for us? No, because unless we call onUserUpdate, it's not going to do anything by just changing the state. So I think that's good. That's essentially what we want. So let's go back to item tests. And now we're going to call this UI updates when items are loaded. Test. And maybe there should be one just for adding an item, right? Like a generic adding an item one. So not just when we load a file, when file is loaded. How about that? When game file is loaded. Game file with items is loaded. And then the name for this one can just be UI updates when items are loaded. When items are received. Right? So again, for this one, it'll be pretty easy because we just call inventory. Well, we can check it first. So we have to find out what our search is going to be. We can retrieve any given inventory component just by specifying a name using the, I think it's not inventory, window. Well, we're going to have to include the system then for all that. But let's go to, I want to say the player inventory, like the character menu window or something. I think that's what it is. I haven't been here in a long time. Welcome to some of our interface code, but yes, this is the window. So when we're creating a window, we define every single component with a name. So the name of this component is character label. The name of this component is equip slot outline, so on and so forth. Also, this function, or this is a namespace, character menu window. That's interesting. I guess I wanted to put some special functions in here. I'm actually going to move this below, because when we come in here, we're more interested in the window. But if we're interested in the namespace, like the implementation details, then we would scroll to the bottom. So it's kind of like the same rules of having like private and public members. Yes, this is great. I only care about it. If I'm looking for it, I'm going to go actually looking for it. So I don't care about it by default. I'm usually interested in the window itself. So anyways, back up here, we've given all of our components different names. So if we're looking for, say, the inventory, we should expect that to be in here, right? So where is the inventory? Let's go look for it. Okay, so those are skill icons. Equipment tabs, item names. Here we go. So let's see here. We got some menu labels. Not quite what I was looking for. I'm looking for like an inventory scrollable window component. That's really what I'm looking for. Oh, well, those are not right. Inventory scroll. Is it not in here? I could have sworn there would be something in here. Let's just look for scrollable window components and see what we find. So the equip list. Oh, you know what? They're all going to be shared, aren't they? So even though it's the quote-unquote equip list, well, the equip list gets hidden, but there's going to be another window component shared between a couple things. So the equip list, and then we have let's see, down here, this is, again, equips. That might be it, actually. The equip list. Is that what populates our inventory, though? I don't know. Okay, I guess the next question. Do we have any listeners? Menu add equip stat listener. Okay. Because this would be a big hint, but we don't see anything else. So it must not be the character menu window. Oh, we have an actual inventory window. Duh, that's what I'm looking for. Although, yes, that's what we want. So, inventory window. Okay. I was a little confused. I was thinking the character menu window, for some reason, was holding our inventory, but really that's just the equip menu. So, here we go. Blank inventory tab, so whatever the category is, and then inventory display dash. We can see that is a row inventory scrollable window component, which is exactly what we are looking for. So, essentially, we have... close the old inventory window and show the proper one. What? So, I see. We're gonna have, like... This is how we retrieve a component, by the way. We have a component function. It's a templated function. So you specify the type of the component, followed by what the type is. In here. Like, there's a bunch of menu types. So you specify that enum. In this case, this is an inventory menu, so we're going to get from there. And then you specify the name of the component. And then that gives you access to the component. So it's a kind of interesting system we made. But yes, we're going to specify this component function. And then we specify what kind of component we're interested in. In this case, we're interested in a row inventory scrollable window component. And then we do open parens. We're going to have to include these types, by the way. They're not known by default. So I'm going to go ahead and include the row inventory scrollable window component. Row inventory scrollable window component. From there, we should be able to access its constructor. Of course, we have to include, I guess in component already is included, menu type. So we specify menu type, and it's going to be inventory. So that's where we're retrieving this component from. And then we just specify the component name we're interested in. So in our case, with this save file, we're going to inspect all the inventory types that exist that are non-stage loot and non-monster loot inventory. If we look back at the, I want to say it's item category.txt, there are a couple categories that have the hide flag. So if they have the hide flag, they do not show up in that tab for inventory menus. So then we're only interested in the ones that are not hidden. So we're going to incorporate that when we're actually checking all of these. So we're going to do it for each category, which means we're going to need a for loop. We first need a for loop iterating through all the item categories, which recently we made a function to make that easier for us. And we're going to strip out any of them that we don't want. So we can actually do that via a filter view. So category. And we're going to grab the initial list of categories via item, get categories. And then we're going to use the pipe operator, because the pipe operator is going to let us specify a standard views filter view. And we're going to filter out anything that is hidden. So the filter view, or these are, I believe, just strings. Yes. So this is going to be a const standard string ref called category. And then we're going to read from our data structure, which should be global. So it should just be data. This is under the item category key. And then inside of there, we should find, well, the category itself is what the key name is called. And then from in there, we're going to read the first value. If the first value is equal to not hide, then it is not going to be included. So as long as it's not equal to not hide, we're going to actually include that in our list of categories we're interested in. So we're going to say get string. The first string in the list is not equal to not hide. Okay. So after doing that, we should have a filter view of all those only, and then we can iterate through those items. So back over here, we're gonna say, okay, now we know what categories we're actually interested in. Let's look up inventory display and then space dash space category name. I'm gonna do a standard format here. Standard format. And that's going to be the category itself. Like so. Let's also make this const while we're at it. And finally, now that we have access to the component, we can ask for how many components this row inventory scrollable window component holds. So we're going to use this operator, which this is a shared pointer, so that gives us access to all of its members and member functions. And then we're going to look at components. So we can get all components to see what's in there. We can also just get the main component count. So this is a little hard to explain. Essentially, subcomponents are every component that so when we first add a component in, right? Like, let's row inventory scrollable window components add row inventory components. Row inventory components can have a list of little components itself, like buttons and such. If we just want to know how many row inventory components we have, we select get main component count. If we want to know how many components including the subcomponent count, we can say get components. Similarly, we have get subcomponents and get subcomponent count. Get subcomponent parent should be the component itself too. So it's a little confusing, I know. And there's a lot going on here. This was made so long ago, so seeing this again is kind of like a refresher, right? So this is going to tell us how many components is attached to this component. And from here, we just need to compare this. This is our assert, essentially. So we're going to store that as a size t. This is the component count. Or let's just call it item count, right? Is it safe to assume that our save file has at least one of every single category of item? In fact, I think when we assert, let's do the exact number. Because doing the exact number, it's going to be a known save file. It's never going to be touched, right? It's a test save file. So we're never touching it. We can get an exact number. I think that's the way we're going to do this. So we're going to do get the item count, and then we're going to assert it. We're going to make sure it's equal to whatever built-in number we choose. So let's actually make an array that contains how many inventory items we expect, right? I think that's a good way to do it. And then we can just populate it. So there's this cool neat trick a viewer told me a little while back, where if you have an array and you have an enum, you can index it as if it was a map, right? I think this is a good chance to use this. So this is an enum filled with the categories, at least the categories we're interested in. And obviously we're going to have to update this when we add more categories, but we're not necessarily testing other categories. We're only testing these. So if we go back to here, in fact, this will error out if we add more categories, which is interesting. It just means we have to update this if we get more categories, which I'm fine with. That makes it more explicit, right? So maybe we'll stick with that for now. I actually like that this will fail if we add more categories to the list, so, which is fine. But anyways, I'm adding these in now, and they're going to be in the same order as they are in the file itself, which then means that when we index into this array, each element represents one item, right? So again, we're going through all these. We got consumables, equipment, accessories, and we have materials. I assume my test file has all these. I am pretty sure it does. It's a file that I basically played through the whole game with, so we expect it to have one of everything. And then we have end enum, which we're not going to touch, of course. So for end enum, I like to not put a comma at the end. I like to put comments around it. That way we know we're not supposed to touch it. And yeah, it's just kind of a safeguard for it. make sure we like block it off. It can't really be touched, right? So I do like to do this. Let's also do this here. Just add a couple. That way it just makes it hard to reach. Like, we want to make that as hard to modify as possible. Don't touch it, essentially. And we shouldn't be putting anything under it. So that's why I don't put a comma after it. If for some reason we're like, oh, let's add to the enum, that will error out, and that's on purpose. So we look at that and we should realize, oh, we need to add stuff up here. So back over here, standard array. This is going to be an array of, what is this going to be? Size t's. These are the expected values. And these size t's are going to be, there are going to be end enum count of them. So end enum is 4, because there are 5 elements in here, 0 indexed. So because it's 4, it's going to initialize an array of 4. We have 4 things we're trying to store. Category, expected values, right? And then we can populate those with whatever we want. And I'm going to populate them manually. So I'm actually not going to make this const. And then we can say, all right, so expected values for consumables. See, this is where the enum comes into play, because essentially we can just do this. We can say equals whatever we want. I'm pretty sure we can't initialize this way. Yeah, that doesn't work. But we can initialize like this. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't actually know what it is right now, so we'll find out after we run the tests and get actual values. And then we'll say, this is going to be the values we expect from now on. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And they should be equivalent. Oh, actually, we don't have to do expected values. We can just say, the number of items in our inventory should be equivalent. Like, the number of unique item entries should be equal to the item count in here. No, that makes way more sense. I actually really like that. Okay, so we don't have to do all this. We don't need static numbers. Like, it's just based on what the actual inventory values are. The UI should reflect the items. They should be in sync. That's essentially what we're testing. Okay, so also, this isn't for when the game is loaded, by the way. This is just for if we're adding an item. So let's do that. Let's say inventory add item. Let's just do health potion again. Keep things really simple, right? And actually, yeah, the assumption was we were going to make something that tested every category. So I was already thinking in load file mode. But really, if we're just adding a health potion, let's just check that one particular inventory. It should go in the consumables. It should not go in anything else. So we could check everything else to make sure it's legit and not messed up, right? So we should expect every inventory to match its component counts. So let's see it. So inventory add item health potion. That means it's now going to be in the inventory. So we're going to say, let's assert that the item count, I think expected is first. I always forget which order is which. Expected is first, and then the actual, no, expected is, item count is what we currently have in our UI. The expected amount is the amount inside of our inventory. So we're going to say inventory get item count. We don't want it for a specific item. We actually want to get the inventory and get a specific category. So we're going to get the category and the number of elements inside of it. So we do dot size. The number of entries should be equal to the item count. And then we can say, we're going to have to use a W format here because it requires a W string. So I have a util that produces a W format, or that does format, but it uses W strings instead. So I call it W format. If anybody wants to know what the wide string format looks like, if it'll, hello Visual Studio, you wanna work? I guess you don't want to work. This is what it looks like. It does a util2w string on v format. You have to use v format because these are not static. Static's the wrong word. They're not compile time evaluated values. They are constructed on the fly, so we have to use v format instead. And we have standard make format args here, which is just a function that passes along arg values. So that's what that does. And so yeah, that's what that looks like, in case anybody was curious. So util w format, and I think I made it so it accepts a normal string. Yeah, because I was just irritated about using w strings in the first place. So nobody likes to use that. So here we're gonna say inventory or UI element count or component count in inventory window. Where did my cursor go? In inventory window. UI component count. I'll just put the count here. In inventory window does not match player inventory count, item count. In category, category, we just print that out too. Okay, so UI component count was, and the assert actually will say what is expected, so maybe this is like a little redundant, but I still want to pipe out the category. So we'll still print that one out at least. Okay. So I think it should be, I think we're missing a C string. Yes. We do have to convert it to a raw wide string. So .c string will do that for us. And we should be good now. It's now a pointer to a wchar. So at least that should work. Let's go ahead and actually compile it and see if it runs, because that part should work. So let me do build, and that should make these two new tests be detected. And we'll just see if this runs. This should just run by default, because we can give ourselves an item, the UI should update. But in terms of doing a load game, it currently does not. So we can also test if we're in the middle of loading a game, it should not be adding or running this. It should not be updating the component. That's actually an expected feature. So maybe that introduces a third test we're interested in, called UI does not update when saving file flag is on, is enabled. Test. Okay. I was probably in the middle of typing this when it was trying to compile, so it didn't actually build. Let me try again. Okay, looks like this time it's building. Great. So now that we've built it, oh, character menu window is not a class or namespace name. Oh shoot, did I mess up something? It's not a namespace. Does it really have to be defined in order? Maybe that's why I ended up doing that. Because I put it at the bottom here, but I guess it has to be in order. I would think the compiler could rearrange it for me, but apparently not. That's interesting. Well, at the very least, can I put in a pragma region then, so I don't have to look at it sometimes, right? Character menu window. I think this is one of the few times where I like to use something like pragma region if I don't want to look at it. If I can't have it my way with like specifying where it goes, then I want to put a pragma region just to make things nicer. I don't know what you do to end it though. I forget. Oh, yeah, pragma in region. Okay. I was close. So by doing that, I can now collapse this without having an issue. Well, I mean, Visual Studio makes that collapsible too, but I kind of want that there. There's a shortcut to make other pragma regions collapsible, like if you're in one. I don't know it right off the top of my head. I used to. Anyway, that's there for if we ever need it. So, let's see here. What was I checking? Oh, okay. Rebuild. Right. It just wasn't building. Ooh, a bunch of linker errors. What's going on here? Unresolved external symbol in item tests error log. What? For item tests? Incomplete. Wait, hold on. That's interesting. Why would this happen? What? Linker error. That's not what I was expecting at all. Do we have like a... did we mess this up somehow? The game helper, include row inventory scrollable window component, include adventures in Listoria. I don't think we're... Well... Maybe... Let's just do a rebuild first. Maybe this got messed up. Rebuild. I'm not sure if it's because it didn't detect any changes or what. But I'm gonna try a rebuild just to be extra safe. Because I'm like... I can't see why a linker error would have occurred here. So that's just strange to me. But yeah. Yeah. Hope everybody's doing well. Making progress. Slowly but surely. I kinda hope we don't have to do much else, but the resetting the item state stuff is probably the biggest one that I think we're gonna have to look at. So we'll have to see. Alright. Well, we're almost good to go. And let's see what happens. Still getting link errors. Okay. So I must have done something wrong. Unresolved external symbol error. So that's telling me that we need to include error? That's interesting, because I think error is supposed to be included in Game Helper. Oh, really? It's not. That's actually really surprising. Okay, well, let's include error then. That would be the first thing to do. I don't know why it would not include error. And then from here... I don't know what the other issues would be. Oh, I see what happened. We're trying to build the unit test suite in the wrong project. Okay, that's what happened. I forgot, we jumped contexts here. So, I can't build the unit test suite in this build because it doesn't have the right... It doesn't have access to those includes. They're in a different directory. So, at least for the unit testing suite. So, that's why I have to switch projects. And that's why we're getting linker errors. I should have realized. Oops. Big oops. We just have to rebuild, apparently, the Steam library files. And a bunch of other random stuff. Come on, you can do it. Almost there. I believe. So much compile time nowadays. Sometimes I like it, but sometimes it's, like, disheartening, too. It's like, I have to be really careful about like changes I make and such. So we're gonna run this test now. And it should pass. I don't expect it to fail. If I wrote the test wrong, I guess so be it, right? So the test passes. That's good. As we know, it pretty much works in game already. Now we're gonna do the one where the saving flag is enabled. So to force the saving flag to enable, I'm just going to literally write here game saving file and set it to true. So we're emulating, basically we're mocking saving the game, because that flag will be true during a save. And then we're going to try adding an item, and we're going to make sure that every inventory in here still has a size of 0. Cast that to a size T. And essentially, item count inside of the row inventory scrollable window component should have the same amount of items as 0 in this case. UI component count in inventory window, oh, I typoed that, is still empty in category whatever during file saving. So we should expect that this test to also pass, so I'm going to go ahead and rebuild and run it. And then we're going to write the harder one, which we're going to purposely force to fail. And the one we're actually interested in right now is the UI updating when the game file with items is loaded. if we load a file, it should load the inventory state to the correct state. So this test also passes. So now we're gonna go ahead and actually try and load a file. So we're gonna do game load, I want to say load, oh, it's gonna be under save game. Save game, I guess save file. Save file. Do we not have access to anything? Do we have to include the... maybe? Let's see. Because these are static functions, right? They should be. Yeah. I'm like, how else would we do it? So let's go back and let's include save file. Okay. And then back down here, we're going to do, oops. Save file, load. I think we have to do load file. I keep forgetting which one's which. Okay. I don't think we have to do load game. Actually, no, we do have to do load game. So we do load game because that sets the state for us. So if we look in load game real quick, load game will call load file. But yeah, it sets that state. So that's actually what we want. And it's essentially what the game calls, so we should be emulating the game. I kind of don't like that I have load game and load file, and I can never determine which one to use. I feel like it would be better if I rename load file to be like underscore load file. That way I know like, hey, this isn't quite what we want to call. I like to put underscore in front of things that are like supposed to be internal. No references were found in selected scope. Let me go to the declaration of it. And let me try that. So, yeah. Let me first find all references, make sure, yeah. Visual Studio is okay. Then I'm going to say load or underscore load file. Apply. Again, it says no references were found. That's weird. I'm pretty sure this should be able to detect that. Symbol is constable, save file, load file. For the entire solution... Oh, we're in the unit testing right now. That's why. I would have to switch back projects. I forgot, that's like a quirk of it. Even though it says entire solution, it like doesn't have the symbols loaded, so... No one's still doing it, actually. Is Visual Studio just broken right now? Hold on. Let's just restart. Cooked Potato, hello! Welcome to the stream. I feel like my Visual Studio is broken, so let's just restart it real quick. And see what happens. We're currently in the middle of writing some unit tests for things we are updating in our inventory code to make it more optimized and faster. Let's try this again. Alright. Maybe it'll actually do it this time. Okay. So Visual Studio was just being silly before, so let's see. We're definitely changing the names of those. We have load file calls here in... Oh, okay, they're in the ifdef. We do want to do that. So hit apply. I'll change everything. Then go back to unit testing, and let's go to item tests again. And before we do this, we're actually going to manually change the save file ID. That might be under save file as well. And if it's private, I will have to do like a save, yeah, it's private. I will have to friend class it then, because save file ID is right here. Oh, I can set the save file ID. Okay, that's good. Oh, but save file ID is a size T. It's the issue I have is that the size T, I assumed I could do -1, but apparently not. So -1 is impossible at the size T. I would have to manually code it. Did you fix the boss and stage bug 2 days ago? Boss and stage? Are you talking about for writing to those inventory loot tables? Because we're actually doing that right now. Or we just did that. right now, we just found out that the UI is not updating. So I decided to write a unit test that makes sure, like, hey, when we are loading the game, does the UI update? We're actually adding a unit test for that right now. But it seems like I can't use save file ID -1, so do I use save file ID like size t the wraparound value for -1? What is size t by default? I think it's like 64. I don't think there's a guarantee though, right? Like, I would rather use a set save file name like -1, but I assume size t by default would be... Is there any guarantee? Can store the maximum size of a theoretically possible object. It will not be less than 16. There's no guarantees on what the size of this thing will be. But it's the maximum size of a theoretical possible object of any type. So we would assume in a 64-bit operating system, it would probably be 64. But it provides no guarantees. Actually, I saw something at the bottom here. Size t is commonly used for array indexing, e.g. on 64-bit systems when the index exceeds uint max, or if it relies on 32-bit modular arithmetic. Yeah, so... Again, it would be an unsigned int in a lot of cases. So that's not even 64, that's just 32. But, either way, we're not going to rely on that. I'm actually going to hardcode the -1 then, and say, okay, this is going to be the save file if we're in testing mode. I think it would be important to use a very specific file in save testing mode no matter what, so we don't have to manually set the save file ID, or remember to do that in testing mode. So I like that idea better. Let's see here. I just have to change what save file path, or no, what save file ID is going to be. Also, we're not doing save, we're doing load. So let's go to load and say load file, which is this. So I'm going to bring out this variable. So I'll still call it save file ID because everything in here uses it. Ooh, I don't know if I want to change the type though. That's kind of... I have to change the whole string. So essentially we're doing this. We're gonna have like a hard-coded save file ID here instead, which means I do have to change this as well. I think these are the only two places it gets referenced. So we're gonna call this the file name, const standard string save save file name. Do you really need it to be -1? I would like it to be something that is impossible for a normal user to make, ideally. If you can cast it from size t to signed int 64, you can set it to -1. Well, the parameter for set save game ID is a size t, so I would have to change the parameter, which I don't really want to do. I think I preferred this. So I'll do is testing mode enabled for game. Game is testing mode, or testing mode enabled. And if it is, let's use a different string compared to this, or this. So the string we'll use instead just incorporates a -001 at the end. So save dot -0001. So that's probably what I'll use instead. And that will be replacing these two. You can implicit cast it. Oh, that is true. If I submit a -1, then it's going to be a gigantic number, and then cast it back to a -1. Let me think about that for a second. I kind of like it. I think we could go with that. I do like that. Let's try it. So we would do set save file ID to -1 here, which will just wrap it around in size t terms. And then in here, when we read it in, it's going to be some gigantic number. So then cast it back, and we're going to just cast it back to a reasonably large sized number we assume that no player is going to need more than 4 billion, like, save files. So realistically, this being a signed 32-bit integer, to me, very much makes sense. So if I just do... Oh, I have to get rid of save file name now. If I just cast it to an int32t, I think that would work. Or I just change it now and decide save file ID is now going to be a 32-bit signed integer. It's basically never going to happen. So maybe this is just a non-problem and I should just change the size or this. Because I want to use -1 specifically for the testing file name. I like that idea better. That way, later I'm not like, why am I casting this to an int32t? Right? Oh, that's funny. In a different component, I just assumed the save file ID is an int. So that's even more funny. I'm not even consistent with what the type is across the board. Okay, well, in that case, I'll just call it an int. Why not, right? If I'm already assuming somewhere else the save file ID is going to be an integer, then I might as well apply that everywhere. Yeah, that's actually hilarious. Okay, so I'm doing that. I think that takes care of that issue. It's not really an issue, just something silly that I encountered. So we're back to save file real quick. No, we don't have to touch save file anymore. That's good. Assuming it prints correctly. I actually don't know how it's going to print that :04. I'm going to look real quick. Because I think the negative will go in front, but let's just be sure by doing a standard cout or print line :04 on a -1. That's converted, assuming to be an int. And we get -0. Okay, so it actually removes a 0. It literally locks it to those. So I assume I have to add a negative sign in front, I think is what it's requiring to get what I'm looking for. And then I get... Oh, I still get the same thing. There's a way to do this. I guess I gotta look it up. Let's go to format. And let's go to format specification. We're looking for appending a negative in front. So the sign option can be one of the following. A sign can be used for negative numbers only. So the 0, it's like 0 colon. 0 colon minus? Is that what I have to put? The hash option. So here, yeah, they do like colon plus 06, but this gives 5 numbers plus the positive sign in it. So I guess I just have to add one if I want a sign, but what if it doesn't have a sign? Then it adds another digit, right? I want it to append 1, so the length is actually 5 if there is a sign, or 4 otherwise. But maybe that just isn't a thing. Maybe that's just stupid. If anything, I'll change it myself, because I'm manually creating this file anyway, and it's coming from that formatted string. I was just hoping there might have been a way. But I don't really see a way, and I don't really want to spend too much time on this. If you do :04, it uses a sign plus the sum. -001 is 4 characters, right. The behavior I wish to have is it's 5 characters long with a minus sign, but 4 without. But that might just not be a thing. Like, it sounds like a silly request, but maybe that's just how it has to be. If anything, I'll just change the file name of this, because that actually is the default behavior of how that works, and everything will be okay. Basically, I'm looking for like 4 zeros, or 4 digits, plus optional sign. Optional negative only sign. It's like this is a very specific demand, which I don't even know if they even considered. So I'll just go with that. That's okay. So load game should now load that save file ID. We should now expect the correct number of items inside our inventory after loading the game. So I'm just going to run that, and that will assert. So right now this test should fail according to what we were dealing with last time. So I'm going to run UI updates when game file with items is loaded test. And this should fail because we noticed in the actual game the component count was still 0. And we know why, but I want to make this test fail so that we can make it not fail afterward. So, we'll see. Okay, save file ID redefinition, different file name. Oh, okay. It's a static variable, so that makes sense. Rebuild. Rerun, please. Okay. We'll see if this fails or not. Okay, it looks like it actually gave up. As in, like, it failed before it could test. So, let's see. We got error. Could not find a connection point with name story11. What? Okay, this is under state overworld. Oh, so this must be the on state change. What's that called? Let me see. Reset game, set stage marker. So it did underscore load file, which called reset game, which included resetting the connection point. Okay, I see what's going on here. So maybe we add some exception to reset game based on testing mode, so we don't actually load something invalid that we don't care about. So change state to main menu, blah blah blah. Set stage marker to player starting location. We'll do this only if we're not in testing mode. In fact, I would argue in a testing environment, we already have a clean slate, so resetting the game is unnecessary. So maybe we just don't. But do I want to make this available in case I need it during testing? Maybe. Maybe I'll just do this. If testing mode enabled, I like this option better because I want to have the potential to still allow for this function to be called, because it literally resets everything, so that could come in handy. Let me run it again. But yeah, load game resets the state of the game, as we might expect, since it has to load new data in. And now it's crashing for another reason. Update current connection point, which I assume, again, the story doesn't exist, so maybe both of those statements cannot be run. I think reset connection points probably is okay. I don't expect that to cause troubles. Alright, one more time. Okay, we have unlock area apparently is busted now, probably for the same reason. Cannot find any connection points with name hub for resetting. This should not be happening. With name hub. Okay, yeah, so we can't reset connection points because a lot of connection points don't even exist. Like, we don't load any of this stuff. So I guess that all goes away, which is fine. Everything else looks okay. Maybe. We'll see. Because we've never had testing mode run on this code, so yeah, new stuff to either block out or incorporate. That looks like the same function. Really? Let me see. Yeah, it's the same function. Reset connection points with map name. Oh, I should go back a little bit. Under unlock area. Unlock area. Oh, that's called during loading a file. Unlock an area that doesn't exist. I mean, that's fair. We don't necessarily have to do unlocks during testing. At least, well, maybe we do, but not... Let's see. Because that one also calls reset connection points, which apparently is the problematic function. Reset connection points with map name. So maybe we just block out this, because it's going to reset based on map name. So yeah, honestly, I would just get rid of those. Let's see, if game testing mode enabled, we'll just quit early. We don't have to do anything here. Oops. How did you make your VS look like that? There is an extension called IDE wallpaper and it just comes with some settings to manage that stuff. So if I go to extensions, you can see here, if I go to my installed ones, there is one called IDE Wallpaper. And the settings it comes with allows you to do funny stuff with it. IDE Wallpaper lets you set like a folder. If you want to display images from a certain folder, you can change the colors of the UI, how visible the text is, just a bunch of like fun little cosmetic things. And then I also have this theme, it's called Cyberpunk. It just makes the colors really bright, so that combined with like a more transparent UI, and I kind of have this going on, so that's how that works. Okay, update current connection point is also failing. Let's see. Yeah, anything related to connection points is failing. I wonder if... Where's this called? Also under load file. Okay. We don't care about that in testing. At least I don't want to care about it. For now. Maybe, so instead of doing this here, so this is a lot more like localized and in a lot of internal stuff, I'm going back out to save file and I'm gonna write those to block here instead. It would be a lot more reasonable in my opinion. So in here, instead of calling like unlocking areas while loading, we can just not care about that. So if game testing mode, if not game testing mode enabled, then we can do this. Because we don't care otherwise about any of the connection point stuff. And there's one down here, so let's do the same thing. It looks like all this is related to connection point stuff, so I can actually block out this whole thing. Because we don't care. Cool. Yeah. This would be a lot better than messing with all that internal stuff, which I don't really want to do. Looks nice. Thank you. Yeah. It's just very fun. Makes programming a little more enjoyable, if not a little harder to read, but I've always told people, like, programming isn't doing too much, like, actual code writing, so it's not like I'm staring at this all the time and having to read it all the time. It's more like coming up with, like, the logic and systems behind everything. Randomized traveling merchant. In set traveling merchant. I guess we can't do that, and we don't really care for that either. So let's just block that out. Alright, let me see if there's just anything else that's gonna cause us trouble. I don't think anything else will. Item categories. Okay, and then we get to the part we actually care about. So, looks like we're almost in the clear. Hard to read indeed. Very fair. Okay, so do we have a test that actually runs now? We do. So we got the assert. The assert says expected 324. The actual amount in it is 0. UI component count in inventory window does not match player inventory account in category accessories. So as we expected, the test is working, and that does match the results we're seeing in game. And we know why that's occurring. That's because we put this here. So now that we have a test that actually tests if that works or not, I'm now going to move it, and we want to put it outside of load game. But because we're doing it here, where we have to fix this flag first, and we have these, which are only scripted, but they're threaded. Since they're threaded, we have to actually do the same thing 3 times. And I could copy paste here. I kind of don't want to, though, in case I have to change the code. I remember to change it in multiple places. So I will do this here where it says, set, say, I'm going to do that same function name I thought of earlier, the set saving flag, or turn off saving flag, and update inventory GUI, or UI. UIs. Okay. So that's more or less what we're interested in. And we're going to put these 2 in there. And these are all either static or global, so I don't have to include any captures. And now we just call this function inside of here, here, and here. We could technically call it here, but this is a fail state. It fails to load the save file, so we don't necessarily have to update the UI in this case. We do have to update the save flag still, but we can do that manually. But in these cases, well, here we even have an else, right? Like, it doesn't even... I don't know why that was out there, but if it fails to load, we still have to turn off save mode no matter what. So I guess that was my logic, was either way we still have to turn off the save mode. It's just whether or not we update the UI. So I guess I'll be doing the same thing here and splitting that up. Like so. So yeah. I think we're good there. I'm just going to ndef it real quick. I'm going to make sure I didn't like typo like syntax, or I didn't just typo something. Obviously this is undefined because that's in the scripted header. That... is that in a lambda? That's why? Yeah, it's in a lambda, so I'm gonna have to capture it. And the lifetime is not gonna die, so we can pass it in by ref. And that should be fine. Okay, good. That way it actually compiles from Scriptin. And we should be okay there. So now, if I run... I'm actually going to run all 3 UI-related unit tests to make sure we didn't break any of the other ones. And that's the nice thing about unit testing, right? We make a change in code, we make sure the change in the code doesn't affect anything else, while also fixing what we intended to fix. And then if this works, we should be able to run our game and actually see our items in a game after loading again, because we broke that by accident, which made me want to write the tests in the first place. So all 3 tests are now passing, that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and run the game, and we'll just take a look. And if everything's good, we'll do a commit, and we will proceed from there. Quick game is still taking a while. We're not sure why yet, but we'll figure that out next. Oh, I forgot to set the startup project, the active project, to this one. Okay, do it again. And let's just try to open our file. It's taking a minute to load everything. Alright. Yeah. Debug mode just takes a while, as it always does. But at least we increase the loading speeds of not only stages, but hopefully this by a lot, so we're not stuck in places as long anymore, even in debug mode. So yeah, that works. Our inventories are back. This was broken before we made that change, so it's good that we have tests to actually detect that too. So now we have to address this. So I should have actually done a profile here, but we're going to profile this now, because I'm not exactly sure what is happening here. I assume that removing the items from our inventory is costing time, which I think is why we have to do the same thing. Oh yeah, I did say that, right? That's why initially we were going to make save game also do that, because removing items is just as costly. So yeah, that must be it. But let's profile it just to be safe. But we can assume remove item, it's the same exact way, right? It updates the inventories every single time. Come on. I'm hoping it might be faster just to restart the game instance. I don't know. I'm hoping, I'm praying it comes up. All right, I'll just restart. So we'll breakpoint at the save game function, because we know it's not actually the save game function, it's what happens right after it. So that's what we actually care about. So we're gonna go save game, wherever that is, save game. We'll breakpoint there, and then we'll come out at state main menu when it reloads the game. State main menu. Let's breakpoint on the I would say right here on state change, because then we've loaded the level. We can even go here, honestly. That's probably fine. Okay, so let's go into here, I think we had a breakpoint because it saves no matter what, which is fine. And then let's go here. We're gonna hit quick game. So let me do... Actually, let's actually start the process and then enable CPU profiling and then let it run. Waiting, waiting, waiting. You probably have to wait a long time, but we'll wait. And then we'll see what happens. But we're gonna assume it's the remove game thing. So is there anything specific for save game I would have to do differently? I have a feeling I don't have to do much differently. Again, we have the flag that determines if we're saving again. So this is literally what we rely on, is it gets set to false. Then during that time, the UI will not be updating. And then we have to call it again. But that begs the question, if we're setting this flag, why isn't that working right now? Because think about it, if we set this flag and the UI doesn't update during this, why does it cost time? It must not be UI related. It must be the actual remove item or something else, right? I guess that's why we're profiling. Yeah. Okay. That logic makes sense. Why is it taking a long time? Because it's not the UI. At least it's not the UI from remove item. It could be other stuff. But let's not guess. Let's actually profile. Also, Amrect, hello. Yay. ITG chart request. Okay, so, as far as I know, that's not an ITG chart, but that's okay. So let's actually disable profiling and take a look at the details. And let's see here what we got. Oh, select a range of time to analyze. Sure. Everything I just did. Please. Alright, what do we got? We have initialize overworld menu window, reset game, inventory clear. This stays at 5,000 all the way to here where it splits in two. So this is under the inventory creator, so again, related to UI inventory stuff. During on inventory slots update. This did get called a bunch, so... Okay, it is a remove item as we suspected, which calls inventory slots updated. But are we not... Do we not have that flag that says this gets ignored during that time? Or is something else happening? Let's take a look, right? Because I thought we added that. If not game saving file. I guess we're not saving a file right now, huh? That's interesting. Let me see why that would be, because we should technically be saving a file right now. We're literally in the save game moment. So set quit allowed. Again, saving file equals whatever the opposite of what we pass in. So saving file is true. Go through all this, blah, blah, blah. Is there any point where this gets called again in here? It doesn't look like it. Not until we get to the very end. So we shouldn't expect that value to change. When does remove item get called? Oh, on reset game. Okay, because we're not saving the game anymore on reset game. Got it. So during reset game, we don't want to update the inventory, right? Because we're resetting the game. Why are we looking at an inventory during that time? I think that's a perfect place to where we also don't do that. So do I invoke that by setting saving file just to avoid that? Or do I actually make some other flag that indicates we're resetting the game at this point? Or is there something else I can do? Let's see what reset game offers. Because there might be something that indicates we're in the middle of that. Maybe. So we'll be on the main menu, and if we're on the main menu, we don't care about that menu being updated. Is that reasonable logic? Not necessarily, because we have to load the game too from that menu. But yes, when we call inventory clear, that's when it's gonna slow down. Inventory clear will call remove on every single item, and that's where all the calls went. So we do want to clear the inventories though. We don't want to start with the tainted inventory. We just don't want to update the UI. So I guess I could, in theory, set saving file to true here and set it back to false and make a comment that just says we are doing this because, right? That is theoretically something we could do here. But that's not really very clear. I could make another variable called resetting game, and we can just have it true throughout this entire function. I kind of like that. It might have other useful applications in the future, you never know. But I think that would be more clear. I don't like using one variable to mean more than one thing. It won't be clear later on when we have it in 5 places, and we're not sure if the state means it's still true for the purpose we intended or the actual purpose. Right? So that's a very dangerous thing to do, to try to use one variable to represent 2 different things. Even though at the moment, using this variable would represent the same, would end up with the same result. So this is for resetting game, false by default. I'll leave it public too, for the same reason as I made the other one public. It's a very low profile variable. If it was higher profile, I'd probably make a getter and a setter for it. Or just a getter. Resetting game equals true right here, and it'll be set back to false after. But if a local variable gets used everywhere, if it gets called frequently, if there's a big risk of it getting overwritten, I will hide it properly. But I don't think encapsulation is really required here. So now that we've done that, we have to go back to the add item function, where we do add item to, or insert into stage inventory category, because we're gonna end up with the same thing, right? Either insert or actually remove item would also call it. So let's drill down a little further. From remove item, menu inventory slots updated, on inventory slots update, should have the check. So we have to go to the inventory creator. Inventory creator. In here, we have to add to these flags. If not game saving file and not game resetting game, then we do this. This is very likely, by the way. So I think that's it. I don't really think that's necessary. I'm like, we just reduced the calls on this. Why would we do that? I think we're good here. Okay, so just have to wait for the recompile, because that was a header file change, the main game class header file. So yeah, that'll take a minute. But that should fix that, and our save game time, well, our reset game time should be good. Should be a lot better. And then I'm happy with the optimizations we've made here. Like, that is significantly better. Significantly. Now, it doesn't reduce, like, gameplay stuff. So, for example, if we call add item, while we're playing the game with a lot of items in our inventory, the game will actually still lock up. I really don't like that, and I might do something about that. So there's more to this. There's more we can do to this. Like, we can go deeper. Like, if we really think about it, the only place where we want to look at or when we care about the inventory is when we go to the inventory menu, right? So should we just populate the inventory menu one time when we click the inventory button to view our inventory? I think that makes perfect sense, right? Why are we updating the UIs as we are either collecting items or removing items from our inventories? Because we're not looking at the inventories during that time. Well, that's not necessarily true, actually. We're looking at some inventories, but not every inventory. For this one, this is specifically the player inventory, which we are blocking off. But there are other inventories. There's, like, if I go back real quick, I forgot we still have this breakpoint. I can remove that now. Right, we have like the row player inventory, the row merchant inventory, row player weapons inventory, row player armor inventory, and the player inventory, of course. But these aren't affected as much. We're specifically focused on just the player inventory at the moment. All these other ones aren't as specific or that we care about as much, so we haven't restricted them, but they don't really cause slowdowns either. So I'm kind of okay right now with not including them. Anyway, continue. And so we might be okay. Like, unless the player collects like hundreds and hundreds of items, which would be very hard to do, it would take a player a very long time, they wouldn't even start to experience the lag. You can't go too far on weapons and armor, those are all unique. Items stack, so there aren't very many items, individual consumable items. And accessories are the only thing you can farm endlessly that are single stack. And even then, even if your boss kills only take a minute, you have to spend hundreds of minutes to collect hundreds of them. And now we've just optimized a core part. Wait, am I in a breakpoint again? Okay, I don't know why it stopped, or I thought I hit it. I swore I hit it. I just feel like this will be a rare situation that comes up, but I guess when the time comes where optimization time is like really noticeably bad again, maybe we'll bring that up. Because like right now, this would be the only trouble inventory, and even in debug mode, I'm sure if we go collect one of these, it's not going to take long to add an item to this. Like, I think we tested it, right? We went, okay, how long does it take? I think it was like 1.5 seconds. You can only get one accessory every time you fight a boss, so it's like you're not collecting multiples of these at once, you're collecting one. If the player experiences this lag, and this is in debug, so in release build it's a lot faster. If a player experiences this lag for one time in the game every couple minutes on something they deliberately chose to do, so it has like an expected response, I don't think that is the most pressing issue in our game. A pressing issue would be like pressing quick game and it takes 30 seconds to get back to the main menu, right? Now it takes 1 in debug mode. So we basically optimized out the parts that really matter. And that's a good thing. That's really what we want. Before I submit this, I do want to run it in release mode as well, just to make sure nothing weird pops up, and also just test the actual, like, this is what a player will probably experience kind of thing. I'll run the unit test one more time, make sure none of the other changes we made has affected anything, and then we can do a final commit and call it good. I think for today, that's very good progress, which means we're back to gameplay stuff tomorrow. We're finally done with optimizing the stuff I wanted to optimize, minus the pre-cache thing that I wanted to kind of review. I was thinking about how I want to approach it, right? Basically, the issue was if we do like a git pull and we pull new maps. Like, they're not new maps, they're the previous maps, but we git pull them, the file write time obviously gets updated, our pre-caching system sees that and says, hey, we have to redo the map cache, which takes a while. It's annoying that we have to do that every time. I found out I can cheat the system by, because we already have a cache date file, so once it detects that the new files have to be recached, it rewrites a file with the current times. I found out if I close the game window when it's doing that, it actually makes it so the cache, quote unquote, is up to date. So that made me think, can I just like invoke either a flag or something that says, hey, you have to wait for a certain amount, like, you basically have to wait for like a run that you declare to redo the cache. But then I was thinking, wait, why do we even have to redo the cache? Like, we don't necessarily delete this, right? So the caches exist. But then I was thinking, okay, well, what if we add a new graphic to the game? Typically my workflow is to delete this and reload it, which does more pre-caching. Things to think about. Maybe I can make my asset loading pipeline a bit better by just making it so we have caches of all the images and know when they update. But then I'm like, do I really want to implement that system? I don't know. It's just things to think about. It's still just up in the air. It's just an idea. I don't think I'm going to seriously go with it. It's a lot of work for little gain. there's not really a reason to change it right now. If we wait a few seconds at the title screen every once in a while during development, it's a pretty low priority thing too. But this feels good. Let's go consume an item again and see what that feels like in release mode. Obviously in release build, it should be a lot faster, right? So yeah, I mean, like, we're not really worried about this. We can handle a lot more. We have a lot more budget, so I'm not too worried about it right now. But eventually, we might want to address it. Who knows, right? This character just has a really bloated inventory that we don't expect a regular player to have, because most of the time you're going to do something with the rings. And even if you hoard some, you're not going to hoard everything. You're going to want to turn some into resources. So, yeah. We're at a good spot, I think. I'm very happy with the optimizations we did. The game is in a much more playable state overall. So I'm happy. Tomorrow we can do actual gameplay stuff. Back to what we've been doing. There are a couple of little quirks I want to address, and maybe we'll start writing those issues now so we remember them for next time. What did we do? So I'm going to read this over. Stage and monster loot tables only populate in dungeon and boss map types. We moved the inventory generator UI updating code for loading and saving the game to the very end of the load and save process. Not done from scripted. That's not true anymore. That was very easy to do. Reducing the number of calls dramatically for improved loading speeds. And then we also did it for saving. Did we mention? Well, that incorporates saving too. Loading and saving the game. I think when I realized we didn't do it for saving, I went back and said, oh, we have to do it for saving too. So that's good. I think that's really it. That describes everything we've done today. So, release build 12A11. And we're passing 235 tests. Oh, actually, that's not true. I did say I was going to do that, so we're going to do that now. I need to confirm we're at a good spot. Set as start a project and go ahead and run everything. Go crazy. And then if that succeeds, we're at 235 of 235 tests passing. And then this branch is ready to be merged. So we have another branch merge. Let's start talking about what we're going to do. So everything here was left here from the last time we were working on actual gameplay stuff. So we have like snow particles must fade away when the blizzard dies. Blizzard blue area circles should remain during the duration of the attack. And add comments to affect child update and draw declarations. So we were working on like a snow blizzard spell. And because we were doing that, we had some stuff left over that I said, we're going to return back to this, but I really want to address the item loading and the pre-map caching stuff because debugging was becoming a pain and we wanted to fix that. So we did. And now we're back here and we've got these things to work on, but I want to add some more things to it that I've been thinking about because we're going to have to address them eventually. They're more just game related stuff that I want to fix. For example, using the disassembly menu on a controller sucks. Literally. Basically, what I mean by that is we saw how many rings that character had, right? Instinctively, what would you want to do on that menu if you wanted to get rid of all those rings? You would highlight over one, hit disassemble, and then you would expect you can like keep spamming it, right? Disassemble, disassemble, disassemble. It doesn't work like that right now. In fact, it's really annoying how it works. Not only does it not select the next item in the list, it actually goes back and it to the top of the window. Like, it literally selects the top item again. So wherever you just were in the list, it's now the position is lost. And it doesn't even select the top item, so you can't spam it. It literally just doesn't work right. So it sucks to use on a controller. with the mouse clicks, obviously you have a little more control, and as far as I saw, it didn't scroll back. So that's one thing. The next thing is dealing with, what was it? There's a new menu we added, the Skills tab, under the Equipment menu, the Character menu, excuse me, needs controller support. It doesn't have any right now, which means the only way to look at that menu, because it's a pretty new menu, so we didn't bother adding controller support yet, but that Skills tab is only accessible via clicking it. So you have to use mouse and keyboard, which is not ideal. So there's that. Two things we have to address eventually. I kind of want to turn them into issues real quick on my repo as our tests complete in the background. So right now we're just running through every test. It'll keep going. It's happy. So let's go ahead and open this up. Let's go to our repository real quick. And let's go ahead and add 2 issues to address eventually. Because yes, I have them in my to-do file, but realistically, I'm not going to get to these right now. We have other things to focus on. So I like to put more long-term stuff in an actual issue. So disassembly menu controller support needs work. We'll label it as a major issue, and it will be a enhancement. Okay, and then we have another issue, and there's my bot spinning out a bunch of the notifications for me. Skills tab under character menu needs controller support. Brand new menu does not have, not reachable via controller. Also, another thing I want to do, I think this one's simpler, so I'm just going to put it here, is the start button on the overworld map should progress to the item loadout screen. So basically, the flow is you're on the overworld map, you navigate using the analog control or the directional pad to the location you want to go to, right? It's an overworld map. And then you're supposed to press A, and if you press A, by default it goes to the next screen, the item loadout screen. However, I found personally that I instinctively want to press the start button, but the start button actually brings up the pause menu on the overworld map right now. So how would we get to the pause menu if we decide to make the start button actually select a stage, right? So I was thinking maybe we make like either the select button or we put the pause menu, like we make the pause menu as another selectable button somewhere. So I've been thinking about it. Like this is more user experience stuff. It's like how should we make the pause menu accessible to the player? Because I would really like to press the start button when I'm on a stage to select it. So that makes quitting out of the game have to be on a different spot, and like looking at the equip menu and stuff. Maybe we just are not allowed to pause on the overworld map, and we have to go to another like screen to pause. I don't know. Like, things to think about. This one's gonna require some like design discussion, and I would like to bring it up with my game designer to see what his thoughts are, because I really want to push the start button every time I'm over a stage tile. So this is a major feature enhancement. It's actually missing. Okay, so that needs to be done. And yeah, we gotta have that discussion. So start button on overworld map to get to item loadout screen, question mark. What do we do for the pause menu? Question mark. So it's more like a discussion, right? And this will be question. Something to think about for the future. All right. Looking good on time here. There are 61 more tests, so we're just waiting for these unit tests to complete at this point. And then I'm going to go ahead and submit this commit, and then we can do a merge into master. And finally, we'll submit this giant thing. Also, I should do the merge with the current remote right now, just to be safe, because last time I had to do that and I didn't realize. So let's just go to Git. Let's go to Manage Branches, and I'm just going to hit on Master. I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to do Merge Master into Inventory Optimization. That way we're just up to date. And it says we're already up to date, so that's good news. I think we just obtained it directly from Master last time, which I think is good news. So that's great. So yeah, we're on inventory optimization, ready to push that in. I love looking at this Git graph. It's always fun to look at. Even for solo projects, as long as you're not committing to master directly and you're properly doing pull requests and stuff, then it's fun to see. We're literally in a straight line right now, but it's fun to see how the graph branches out over time, right? It's kind of fun. There are a couple places where sometimes I make a new branch, so that ends up making it jump around. It's just kind of cool to see. I always like looking at those. Whee! You can go on and on. I'm just buying time until the tests are done. But yeah, it's fun. Sometimes we end up with some weird stuff if we mess up a certain commit. Oh, that's literally the beginning. June 11th, 2023. Good times. That's when the project, well, the first commit was done. The project was born a little before that, just discussing theoreticals, oh, here's a game we could make, theoretically. Let's mess with it. And then it eventually turned into a project. All right. All tests are passing. Our game is in good shape. Commit. Big commit. Now let's go back to here, and let's go to pull request, and let's start one. Merge into master from inventory optimization. New pull request. And create pull request. Alright. Why does that look wrong? Why does it say I want to merge one commit? Is that right? I only want to merge one. Hold on. Really? Was all this in one commit? I guess I really did do everything in one go. Okay, I mean, that's fair. It was... Change-wise, it was pretty simple, right? Also, we'll do the merge commit when checks succeed, of course. Now that I think about it, if we actually look at the changes, it wasn't that much. Obviously, the unit tests are probably the biggest chunk of code we add, but... Yeah, it's more we had to rearrange some stuff, make a few new variables and member functions. Overall, I guess we really didn't touch much, so I guess that's how it goes sometimes, right? So, overall, that's pretty good. I'm happy with it. It's been a fun day. Fun day of coding. But tomorrow will be even more fun because we're actually doing gameplay stuff again. Yay. So we get to finish up the monster spellcasting system. We have just a few more things to look at for that. We gotta make 2 more spells, 3 more spells? I don't know, something like that. And then after we make those spells, we just have to implement the rest of the monsters for Chapter 4. I need to talk to my pixel artist to get Chapter 4 monsters started. And then we can start working on the Chapter 4 bosses. One of the Chapter 4 bosses is going to be very fun to make for a very special reason. I'm not going to share it until we get to it, but I think it's going to be a very fun thing to code up. And I honestly anticipated it because my game designer told me how the system worked a long time ago. So I kind of anticipated it and wrote some of my data structures in a very specific way in anticipation of it. So we're going to see if the fruits of my labor for doing that pay off when we get to it. I'm keeping it vague for a reason. I want it to be a surprise, but also it'll just be fun to do. So we'll get to that probably in like a week or so. I'm really excited. But yeah, it's supposed to be a pretty fun boss. Alright. I'm just waiting. We're just waiting for the some scripting build. It's gotta make sure the web build and the Linux build work. So this is just an automated, what do you call these? Action? Yeah. An action that will build the project on my server to make sure it actually builds and runs on Linux as well. Someday I will address all these warnings. Someday. But we have to wait a while. I think it takes like 5 minutes on my server, so it'll be a little bit. But once it's done, it will be merged into master, which means another big commit out of the way. Yeah. I'm very happy with how today went. But to catch us up on where we were, we're going to be working more on the Blizzard monster spell effect. So if I were to go to, I think it's called Monster Ability, which we implemented not too long ago. Oh, let me get out of this branch though. I don't want to mess with anything anymore. Let's go back to... I should still be here. We were working on the Skeleton Fire Mage. That was like a monster that did spell casting. But we were going to build all the spellcasters from the same branch because essentially one spellcaster is the same. You just change out what spell they use, right? And then let's push this. Let's make this up to date with what we just wrote. With all the optimizations we did. So we're just going to sync it right now with... where was it? We're going to sync it with inventory optimization. So merge into Skeleton Fire Mage. Yeah, and that's 168 files, so this branch is slightly behind, but the merge shouldn't have caused any conflicts, and it didn't, so we're up to date. I'm just going to go ahead and push that to remote as well, so we know that's up to date. And now, we're going to go ahead and look again at the monster ability class. So just a preview for what we're doing tomorrow. Here are the functions that get run when an ability is casted by a monster. You can see we just have a placeholder, standard C out. But we started working on adding an effect for Blizzard, which has a particle emitter, so it just like spews out a bunch of particles too. And I think the only complaint I had for it, and I wrote it here, was potentially the snow particles must fade away when the blizzard dies. I don't know if I like that. That might actually be too jarring. Like, what I imagine is, like, all the snow particles that the emitter generates have a lifetime. They're not tied to the blizzard effect itself. So when the blizzard dies, the emitter dies, but all the snow particles that were already there are still there. I don't think the player would mind that they are there. They know they're gonna not take damage. Mostly because of this blue area of effect circle, which apparently doesn't stay up during the cast. I want it to stay up during the entirety of it, so we have to bring that back. I don't know why it disappears, or even if it appears, but we have to do that. So that's one of the things we have to fix. It should be pretty easy, because we just have to look in here and figure out, okay, what did we do wrong, right? Surely we just messed up something simple. The Blizzard uses circle.png. We color it like a bluish tint. So that should be appearing here because we called the effect draw function. Who knows why it's not appearing, right? Maybe we got the scale wrong or something. So we'll have to look at that. I bet this is the scale parameter actually. Oh, that's the speed parameter. Okay, so it's not that one. We'll have to figure it out. I'm sure we did something silly. Something super silly. But yeah, we'll figure that out next time. And then we have to do freeze ground. That one's simpler. At least I think it's simpler. I don't even remember what it does. But we can bring up chapter 4 monsters and look at that real quick. This is just like the design document. Quote design document, right? More like this is the spec. Instantly creates a 500 radius frozen area, decreases players' move speed by 5% every 1 second the player's inside. So it's just like a frozen area. We can do a little like effect with maybe some blending, and that's pretty much it. That's not bad. It's an area that slows you down and it does some damage per second. I like that. That's a very easy one to implement. Very chill. Haha, get it? Because it's chill. Alright. So, we are merged. Oh, not yet. We're still waiting. A little more. 2 minutes, huh? Oh, shoot. It started another one? Why? Why did it restart? Oh, from Skeleton Fire Mage. Wait, so this one just decided to quit because of the other one? I don't think that's how this should work. Has started running. In Skeleton Fire Mage. Oh, that's interesting. It just decided this was going to be what it used instead. It's like the same thing. I don't understand. Why didn't it just continue this? If it's the same commit, why would it restart the build? I feel like that's a bug. I wonder, I should probably look that up later. Like, Gitty, why would you have to restart that? That doesn't make any sense. I'm glad you got the joke. I'm glad you appreciate the joke. Anyway, I'm gonna call it here for today. Today's been a, yeah, that is very weird behavior. I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. It's the same commit, like we see same ID. It's just like, oh, start the job over. Because I just updated my other branch. It's like, I don't feel like that's should be a thing. But who knows? Maybe there's like a YAML like runner parameter for it or something. I don't know. But it's probably a Git thing. We'll have to see. It's just a little bizarre. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to call it here for tonight. It's been fun. I'm glad we optimized our game a bit. It runs a lot better now. I'm very happy with the performance of it now. So, less debugging woes and less trouble for the player too. They won't experience a long loading times anymore. The CI can fail itself, but I don't know what your local one does. It can fail itself, so yes, when it does, I have to manually restart it, so I guess there's that. But, yeah. Thank you for all that tuned in today. Hope you all enjoyed. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be back with coding next Monday to start working on gameplay stuff again. We can finally do some more fun things than just optimize, optimize, optimize. I'm just glad to have the main problems, pain points out of the way. It's been good. Bye, everybody. Until next time. Have a good weekend.